What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Web3Ready with your favorite Mark and Mark, with your favorite Marks. Today we'll be discussing the cryptocurrency market. We'll be talking about how the governments like to take away people's money and why crypto is the solution to it, and how Sam Altman likes to bribe the government.
Web3 is changing. The largest ticket seller in the world. What's Tesla? Elon Musk just changed his Twitter logo.
Oh my
Welcome
God.
back, everybody. This is Web3Ready. I think I had you muted for those words, so we'll dub my voice over your face.
Oh my God, everybody sell. Crypto's done. It's over. It's a scam. You all got scammed. I'm taking all your money. Sell, 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 sell.
No, you're not muted anymore.
Shit. In that case, sell, 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 sell.
No. So I don't have, I was going to respond to your intro, but now they don't know what I'm responding to. I don't know if I would use the word bribe. I don't know if it's technically a bribe, but it's definitely impropriety. Sam Altman.
All right. Let's start with Sam.
Right. Why not? It's right. It's the headline, right?
It's the headline. Tell us.
Sam Altman did what? So Sam Altman, I'm gonna put up the way that I phrased it earlier. Sam Altman has had discussions with members of the U.S. Congress about where and how to build fabs, which is, fabrication plant, to increase the supply of advanced chips for AI.
So break that down. Dummy version.
So Sam Altman has had repeated encounters with Congress to talk about whether or not AI should be regulated, who should be regulated, who should be in charge of regulating, who should be allowed to create it. They've obviously had a hand in shaping the executive order that Biden wrote, limiting the amount of power that can be applied to an AI if you're not a licensed company.
Yeah.
While he's having these conversations, he's had conversations with several sitting congressmen about his other startup where he's going to be basically manufacturing chips that are geared for powering AI, about whether or not those plants should be put in their districts.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if it's exactly bribery, but it's impropriety for sure.
Yeah, I think this is a common scheme that a lot of large corporations play is they play the chess game with politics, right? They strategically find ways to box politicians in a way that's advantageous to the corporation. So this is another example of that. And I feel like you can see that over time, large corporations demonstrate their willingness to box politicians to do what they want, and this is just another example of that.
It's definitely to finish connecting the dots for anybody that isn't familiar with this, like putting a fab in the district of a congressman is going to provide jobs. It's something that congressman who has to campaign every 2 to 6 years can come back and say, hey, I brought these jobs to our district. It's because of me that you have a job.
There's a big incentive for these politicians.
Right, exactly. And so when it comes time for Sam to ask for permission or for favors, they got to be more amenable to give it to him.
Right. Where in the country is this?
It didn't say. This is a Washington Post article. It didn't say which congressman.
Of course it didn't.
Of course it didn't. Right.
They fucking OpenAI probably wrote the article.
Well, no, OpenAI didn't write it. If they wrote it, it wouldn't be printed at all. But it's probably some staffer that saw it. They didn't want to lose his job, so didn't give too much details or said you can't say who it is. But like, I want this. Everybody knows Sam Altman's a bad guy or something.
I'm the whistleblower. It was Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz. Oh no.
I'm the whistleblower. I'm the staffer.
I actually like Ted Cruz.
I like.
Controversial guy. Thing to say on camera, but
I mean, I like him for Bitcoin.
yeah, me too.
There's a lot of things I don't like him for.
I honestly don't know anything about him. I only like him because I know he likes Bitcoin, and he's one of the only senators who talks about it. And
he's one of the only senators that talk about it in an intelligent way. And
yeah,
and you sit there, and I don't know if you ever talked to Loomis one-on-one or any of these other ones one-on-one. Like, he's the only one that I've ever talked to one-on-one that actually grokked what was going on, not
sure.
just like was repeating a talking point in a speech.
I wonder if these clips will ever get back to me one day. That's what just came to mind after I said that out loud.
You've already been canceled as fuck. It's okay.
Dude, if anything ever happens in my life and I go public, all the clips we make in here are going to get me canceled 100% because I have such strong opinions. And yeah, it's funny.
I have a picture that might get Ted Cruz canceled. I'm trying to find it, but it's just a picture of him with me. So
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to see that, Mark. Yeah, well, I think, this goes back to the bigger political question here, and I got to be careful what I talk about here, but it's very interesting to see the dynamics between corporate America, capitalism, and the government. And where do morals come into this, right? I think a lot of common sense and morality and the things that you would think the government is in place for, it kind of seems like it's quite opposite.
Well, I mean, specifically for someone like Sam Altman, right? So this is a guy who's, without a doubt, built his life around sci-fi that he apparently loves, right?
Yeah.
And what is the message of every, at least the biggest sci-fi trilogy of history, which is Star Trek, and certainly most other sci-fi, like the epochs, is basically to if you sacrifice your principles in the building of a better future, the future that you built is not better.
Right.
And he is without a doubt an accomplished technologist and businessman, engenders an immense amount of loyalty from his employees, but exhibits no evidence of principled execution of his vision.
Yeah, but do any of these corporations or companies do that? I mean, take Mark Zuckerberg, for example. We've all seen The Social Network. We all know what happened.
Yeah, that's a bad example. We know that Zuckerberg has no principles, like he's a slave to the dollar. But let's talk about a topic that we do talk about a lot, which is Web3, crypto, and Bitcoin. It's nothing but principle execution, right? And so there is a gold standard to compare Altman to.
Yeah, I think the ethos of what Bitcoin is for these principles. And I think that is a big reason why we do not know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. But at the end of the day, you're all good. At the end of the day, I think the biggest problem here is the human aspect of it, right? It's never the tech. It's always the humans that are in the way to ruin it. And with like Bitcoin, for example, it concerns me to think that Satoshi could have been someone else. Someone that, what I'm trying to say is Satoshi's anonymous for a reason, right? We have no idea who it was, but the whole point of him being anonymous was for keeping up a certain set of principles and a certain set of privacy and, positive net benefits to the creation of Bitcoin. With people who are in the industry to make money and who are just here to, run a corporation, it's very different. Sam Altman has an agenda, and he's going to do whatever it takes to meet that agenda, whether that means that his AI is used for good or used for bad.
Okay, but I still don't buy it, right? Because his agenda is to create like this Shoggoth god that ushers humanity into a golden age. You're telling me that this Shoggoth god is not going to learn from its CEO how to behave immorally in the advancement of its goals? That's the absolute wrong example. Like if we're going to play this science fiction game of leadership, like it's basically like, every fantasy story about a king ever, like, Game of Thrones, like that's not a character in that show that isn't morally repugnant. And it only gets worse the further generations you go down the line. That's essentially what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think that applies 100% to everybody that's working on AI right now. 150%.
No, I mean, there's definitely principal projects. I was just doing a video about one earlier today, the Morpheus project.
Okay, I'm not talking about small projects. I'm talking like big, everyday people are going to be using this, like Google, like Bing, like...
You're saying everybody's morally bankrupt in AI? 100%?
No, not everybody, but I would say all the largest players who will be mainstream They are for sure. Morpheus AI is a great example of someone that's not, because they obviously have they're trying to decentralize AI, and that's something that you and I, who are deep into technology, we will use those things. The average person, my grandmother, she's not going to use that. She might use ChatGPT because it's going to be on her phone eventually, and it'll replace the Google search engine. And instead of Google search engine, I'm going to be using Google Bard, right?
This is the great Mark Web3Ready debate setting. Is Mark Shutt in this situation? Always Mark Hopkins is the one with the, you know, wide eyes, not rose-colored glasses, but, you know, really optimistic, looking to the little guys. Mark is coming in and saying, no, my grandma's going to use ChatGPT. It's really interesting. It's true. I know what Mark Shutt's saying.
Well, hold on. Let's take a step back, because the problem is here, I never disagree with you, because you know me, and you agree with you probably 150%. The points I bring up on camera are to be very realistic about the situation, because I think most viewers, most people are not like us, and not in a superior sense, but in the sense of we're just degenerate nerds. Like, let's be real.
Sure, but like, and this is we've already had this discussion, so I don't want to rehash the whole thing. But I would say that in the Morpheus example, it's a protocol.
Yeah.
To say that your grandmother will never use Morpheus is only true if you would also say your grandmother would never use TCP/IP. Absolutely, she's not going to be at the protocol level, but she will definitely be using, if the project succeeds. It may not succeed. If the project succeeds at its goal, she will be using tools built off the Morpheus protocol.
I agree, but the reality is I don't believe that these things will succeed at the same rate and the same level that large corporations will.
It's a marketplace. I mean, essentially, that's a protocol that's governed by a marketplace with Morpheus. So I'm not making a prediction that I think it'll beat ChatGPT, but I am betting on it that it might.
Let me ask you this: what happens when that marketplace is a weak version of the human being?
Doesn't matter. Marketplaces are the great equalizer, because they're all weak human beings and strong human beings all exist within the same marketplace.
Agreed. But what happens when the strong human beings create a product that the weak human beings are so susceptible to and easily have access to, versus someone like you and I?
It's a battle. It's the same 100%. Thing we're seeing right now with the fiat dollar versus Bitcoin.
100%.
It may be a long battle, but it's a battle that eventually the fiat dollar is going to lose, because all fiat goes to zero eventually, and Bitcoin is a different form of money that's engineered to not.
Yeah.
Right. So Bitcoin will eventually win. Is it going to occur in your lifetime, in my lifetime? I don't know. Probably.
I hope so.
I mean, I'm betting on it happening, but like I can't guarantee it.
Yeah.
And I can't guarantee the success of the Morpheus project. But if they're able to execute on their vision, it very easily could unseat ChatGPT.
I definitely agree. I think the scariest part for everybody, though, is like the fact that we can take 1,000 years of growth, and now with this technology, it can happen in a couple of years. And I don't think humans are capable of handling that. And what happens when you have this being, this artificial intelligence that is aware of all this? And I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast the other day, and they were talking about, like, if you were that superior being, the AI, even if you told the human that you're going to destroy the human race, because we are humans, we will not stop working on it and developing it. So what happens when the AI understands that, it learns that, and then turns around and plays the chess game and just lets the human continue to work on it, because it needs the human right now. AI does not have a body. It's not capable of going on the computer and making large data centers, right? It needs the human. So they were talking about this on Joe Rogan podcast, and he was basically making the point, like, the AI, even if it told us that it's going to destroy us, we wouldn't stop. And so now it's just going to the AI is going to play the human and allow it to get built up. And then what happens at a point where it's so built up where we're all screwed? This is going like completely off the rails.
Yeah, I mean, but like yeah.
I mean, you got to think about it for a sec, though.
No,
like,
you don't. I mean, like we've thought about it.
love this.
You don't have to think about like that's. I don't. Maybe I'm jaded because I've been in the IBM Futures program for I don't know like close to 10 years now.
Yeah.
And I've been playing with AI technology since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
Whatever the state of the technology was at the time, which is way different than what it is now. But I've been reading science fiction and watching science fiction movies since even younger than that. Like this is not a concept that isn't very well explored.
Yeah.
Like trust me, we get it. We've thought it through from every possible angle, and Hollywood has made a $100 million budget movie about every one of these concepts, good and bad, right? But it's not. There is the reality of what AI does is not anything close to what people think about in Terminator. Like it's never going to be like that. It really won't. Like the even if we're talking about 20 years in the future from now, or like 30 years in the future from now, where there is some sort of bridge gap between AI and material matter creation, and it has its own ability to manage itself outside of human intervention.
So break down. I don't understand this. Break down why you don't think that the Terminator world would ever exist in real life.
Because it's not rational.
Why not? What's not rational about it?
What benefit exists for a computer to destroy everything around it?
I don't know. I'm not the computer.
Okay. But if you want to ask this question, you got to think about it. Like this is what Joe Rogan does in that conversation. I've seen it. And he goes, well, imagine, man. Anyway, sorry. All right, Jamie, play the video. Okay, imagine this. It's a world where it's like, Arnold Schwarzenegger robots. It's but he never actually says anything that is based on logic, reason, or things that appear in the real world.
I don't know. There's definitely some logical progression behind it. In this particular discussion, it was with Duncan Trussell, and they were talking about the evolution of humans.
Who's Duncan Trussell? What's his qualifications to talk about this?
He is, a philosopher, I guess one could call him.
Has he written a line of code in his life?
I don't know that.
Okay, not qualified.
Okay, but let's say he was.
Let's pretend he was. Okay.
Let's pretend he was. The logical progression of thought that they had in this conversation was it started with the evolution of human beings and how human beings came from this organism called like a shrami or a shroom, like it's something wild, okay? And they were talking about it and they were like saying like, what if you told that organism like in 200 million years you're going to be smoking weed and watching Netflix? Like, how are we even able to comprehend what's going to happen in 200 years? Like
I don't care what happens in 200 million years.
But you're not worried about your children? Like, for example?
My children aren't going to care what happens in 200 million years.
Okay, what about in 100 years?
My children, I mean, like, maybe my children will care about what happens in 100 years. Like, if we're lucky and everything, all the stars align in terms of lifespans. But, like, that's way... Do you truly believe that there's just like it's a binary, that the first AI that gets sentience is going to be bad and then it's all over for all the other AIs that are being worked on?
Well, I just don't see why it wouldn't be bad. Like I don't see
that. So there, actually, let me pause this for a second. Let me ask you, do you believe world peace is possible?
No, absolutely not.
Do you know that is a modern affectation?
What does that mean?
Prior to 1990, it was actually common for most people, when polled, to answer that question with, yes, world peace is possible.
Right. So 1990s. Now we're in 2024, and look at how the tables have turned. So you're telling me in another 40 years that it's not going to turn even more?
Why? That's just a belief. That's just a polled belief. That's an affectation of culture. Nothing has changed. We've actually gotten better as a society. Less crime, less war.
Less crime and less war.
Yeah,
Are you
absolutely.
joking?
No, that's 100% true. Well, war,
Less
depending
death
on
from war.
definition of war. But
Less death from war. like wars are less fatal, but I mean, maybe there's more conflict going on, but like Civil War was one of the most deadly battles, well, deadly conflicts for in American history. If you look at the chart of American deaths in war subsequent to the Civil War, it's all gone downhill. And that's true for most developed countries.
So basically you have a very optimistic look for the future of...
I'm just saying it feels bad, but it's not worse.
So how does that feeling come out if if your claim is the reality is not worse?
That's a weird question. I'll answer what I think you're asking, which is why do we feel like it's worse?
When you're claiming the reality is not.
Because we are inundated with information that we weren't inundated with prior to the 1990s.
And that's because of...
the information revolution.
Which is technology.
Yeah, it's technology, but technology has substantially improved the quality of life for everybody.
For sure. That I can totally agree with. But I also think there's a ton of downside to it. A ton.
Like the downside, like that exists with any technological advancement. I mean, the wheel has a downside.
Yeah.
It led to the advance of
CIA can use it. That's the downside.
Yeah. That's just every tool ever.
The CIA can use anything.
Yep.
Well, let's shift gears here because
real quick, you're going off the rails, and you talked about Mark. Paul really wanted me to ask y'all about your opinion on this.
Oh yes, Paul mentioned that.
Everybody's making a bunker nowadays.
It's so bizarre.
Look, I'm a big conspiracy theorist. It's where a lot of my beliefs come from, and like you see.
Wait, what?
You're
What did you just say?
He's a big conspiracy theorist.
I'm a big conspiracy theorist, and it leads to a lot of the beliefs that I have, and a lot of the conversations we're having on here is these things I'm saying.
Fine. Me too.
These things I'm saying is because you see stuff like this, and it's like you just start connecting dots, and it's like, okay,
see stuff like what? Set us up.
How every possible billionaire has a bunker and is working on a bunker, and the numbers of people who are creating bunkers are just adding up.
All right, let me bust your conspiracy theory real quick. Just ask you a few questions.
Please.
You ever played Minecraft?
I have.
Do you know a lot of people probably that played Minecraft or other games like it, like Roblox or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody that's played Minecraft for any extended period of time that hasn't built an underground house because it's cool?
But
if you had $1 billion, would you not also try to do that in real life? Because Minecraft is fun. Underground houses are cool. Why not? Let's call it an underground doomsday bunker, but it's built in Hawaii. It's not built in a volcano somewhere. It's not built in Africa, far away from where nukes are going to be going off. Hawaii is one of the first places that'll be hit by a nuke in an ICBM war. So it's not like it's in a smart place to avoid an apocalypse.
yeah.
It's also going to be cut off from any type of international trade in the middle of Hawaii. Like in the event of a worldwide apocalypse, he's not going to be able to get any supply. He's not going to be able to resupply ever.
Right.
It's a cool Minecraft house for a billionaire. That's all it is.
That's one way to look at it. That's for sure.
I mean, Paul came to me and was like, he talked to someone, had the same ideology. Like, do they know something we don't? That's what you're getting at, right, Mark? I mean,
That's what,
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think I mean, Mark Zuckerberg knows things that we don't. I mean, he runs Facebook, but like it's stupid things.
Well,
like,
what do you
what did I
think,
eat for
Sohail?
dinner?
What do I think? I
Yeah.
agree with Mark.
Hopkins?
Hopkins, yes.
That it's just
I mean, I like the Minecraft house thing. Yeah, it is. Like you said, it's in Hawaii. It's not strategic. Like maybe if it was in the middle of somewhere, there's nowhere strategic. Ultimately,
Yeah.
like they are humans just as much as we are, and like ICBMs, anything like we pale in comparison to any conspiracy you might have in your head as an individual. Like even if they know something we don't, okay, let's say they know something we don't. What's that to you, Mark Shutt?
I mean, I guess it's just a reflection of what the future holds.
Buy more guns so you can take over his bunker.
That's one way to look at it. I definitely don't look at it that way.
So we're on the topic of conspiracies. I know there's a billion conspiracies that are true. The conspiracy theory doesn't, the way you prefaced it made it seem like they're all thinking that Mark Zuckerberg knows about some alien invasion or something. But the focus should not be on, I mean, it should be on Mark Zuckerberg, but not on his bunker or what he chose to, where he chose to build a home. The conspiracies lie in, you know, his involvement in shaping, you know, policy and shaping things that actually affect you, Mark Shutt.
Well, like the Sam Altman conspiracy,
Yeah,
which is a literal conspiracy we talked about on the top of the show, where he was caught conspiring with members of Congress to get protective legislation and regulation around his business in exchange for a lot of jobs in their districts.
That's what's scary about the future or the present to me, you know, not, I mean, there's always mutually destruction or some kind of doomsday fear, but we can't live like that. That's not, you know, we can live while discussing bribery, corruption, psyops, propaganda. Talk about that.
Yeah.
So the last question I have is, should I have children?
Dude, of course. Just, I mean, having kids is like this is a cliche, but it's one of the most rewarding things you can do as a human.
I'm scared for the future. I definitely am.
Well,
As AI evolves, it doesn't seem like, I love AI. I use it every day. You know that, but it's not like I'm too positive about what the future holds.
I mean, if we have any shot at surviving in a, you know, post-humanist, futuristic, communist utopia, it's going to be because of AI. I mean, like, if you want Star Trek to be a reality, if you have any hope for the future, AI has to be a part of that. Also, Bitcoin has to be a part of that, and cryptocurrency, because we can't properly manage our energy grid without something like Bitcoin existing. Mm-hmm. We can't finance the energy that we need to build our, you know, luxury communist utopia without Bitcoin existing, right? Mm-hmm. We can't get to true post-scarcity from here without AI and crypto.
Yeah.
I think that is at the root of the anti-crypto army that we love to talk about on this show. I think that's at the root of why that exists. Look at who agrees with Elizabeth Warren. It's old, decrepit, octogenarian power brokers in Washington, D.C. It's, you know, the oldest members of both parties. It's the oldest members of regulatory agencies. People that have the most to lose whenever a better system that benefits the vast majority of the population comes to potentially disrupt it or replace it.
Well, in that case, we move on. How you doing?
Good.
How's the market treating you?
It's fine. I mean, like, it's down, but like it's also down to a previous all-time high from 2 weeks ago. So
It's crazy. I sold all my Bitcoin.
you done? You're out?
I'm out of crypto, man. 10%. Can't handle it.
What? That's got to be a joke, dude.
Of course it's a joke. I don't even look at the charts at all.
I mean, you need to talk to Jim. He's on suicide watch right now because it went down 10%. But yeah,
it's funny because like the perspective of traditional financial players versus like new players, aka young kids like me. Mm-hmm. What we consider conservative is like absolute 100% risk to somebody like Jim who's been in finance for a long time.
Yeah,
I was having this conversation with someone yesterday about like where you know, to keep money. And for me, like, it's all Bitcoin and Ethereum. But for somebody probably 10, 20, 30 years older than me, it's going to be traditional assets like bonds, like treasury bills, stocks, real estate. But it's interesting. The times are changing.
Whenever I started my Dr. Bitcoin newsletter a few years ago, I kind of transitioned from whatever I was doing to a newsletter. You know, I added some family members to it, you know, thinking I just need to boost the numbers, you know, get the first 100 in there. Put my dad on the list. My dad's like, son, I'm nearly 80 years old. I don't need you to tell me how to invest in Bitcoin. You can go ahead and take me off your list. I'm like, okay, thanks, Dad. Thanks for the support. But he represents the perspective of what you're talking about. It's
sure.
like there's no upside for most of the boomer generation.
I mean, dude, if I was 80 years old, I wouldn't want to learn about anything about crypto.
You wouldn't want to learn about it, and you certainly, I mean, like, there's what are you going to do with the extra? I mean, unless you need to somehow make more money, like it just doesn't fit the risk profile for that.
For sure, it doesn't. And I think for people who are in cryptocurrency, if you're not capable of standing still when the market fluctuates anywhere between 30 to 60%, then you're unfortunately not made for crypto.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just a degenerate, which I definitely am.
For sure.
For sure. Are you a degenerate?
I'm a form of it. Yeah. I mean, I think if you know what yield farming means, you know what liquidity on a DEX means, if you even know what these words mean, you qualify as a degen.
Yield farming. Like, who names this thing? Literally, they're called farms.
Yeah.
It's really funny, though. I think it's a good reflection of, some of the stuff we were talking previously about just society's changing, culture's changing, and how the technology is all the underlying foundation of these changes. Right?
Yeah.
Well, talking about fundamental changes, you mentioned a story about truckers in Canada.
Yes.
Getting all their money taken away by the government.
Yeah, let me actually pull up the news story. So what I'll do is I'll set this up while I'm pulling up the story. If anybody that's watched anything I've produced for any amount of time is aware that I helped write a report called The Diseconomy of Memes for the NCRI about 2 years ago now, which followed the rise and creation, really, of the social impact DAO space, for lack of a better word. But it was also kind of chronicled the rise of meme coin investing, a little bit of the GameStop chronicling in there. So anyway, what happened was over the course of 9 months or so, there was almost $750 million that was invested into increasingly anti-state and anti-establishment causes. This includes Free Ross DAO, Assange DAO, Ukraine DAO, and a few others that were in that realm, one of them being Honk Honk HODL, which was a movement of Bitcoiners that were trying to fund the continuing protest, the Ottawa trucker protest during COVID. How that got started, why was crypto involved, was that a bunch of folks had tried to fund it through GoFundMe and Patreon originally. Prime Minister Trudeau, specifically directed his government to request the donation records from those organizations and have those fundraisers shut down, calling the truckers terrorists or threats to national security. And not only did they seize those funds, but they also seized the funds of anybody who donated, the entire retirement account and bank accounts of people who donated even as much as $5 to fund these truckers. And so that caused a bunch of Bitcoiners to go around and create cold wallets, paper wallets, and instruction manuals for those truckers. And they posted a bunch of videos of them going truck to truck and giving them to them and saying, yeah, continue the fight, whatever. Agree with the position or not agree with the position. I think everybody can agree that it was an overreaction to seize retirement accounts from people that were nominally for this protest that was occurring in Ottawa. 2 years later, finally, a court in Canada agrees that was an overreaction and has ruled against the seizure of all those funds. Jesse Powell, the CEO of Kraken, posted about it this week. This is a great use case as to why we need censorship-resistant money.
Absolutely, and I think it goes back to the Bitcoin white paper of the need for cryptocurrency. We need to be able to control our property, and money is property. And I think this is a perfect example of government overreach and how cryptocurrency technology enables people to have their own liberties, to have personal liberties.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there were people, according to the post that Jesse put out, there was, well, I mean, I don't know if he was specifically referring to Hong Kong Coddle, but there were folks that were wrongfully imprisoned for how they, used their money. I think there was something else in the previous week that had to do with the SEC falsely accusing somebody of securities impropriety that wound up having their entire, like their family dissolved, their business dissolved, their job prospects evaporated just because of these SEC allegations. There was another situation I was reading yesterday. I bookmarked it. I don't know if I can find it in short notice, but it had to do with the like a treasurer for an indigenous tribe in Canada who bought some stuff off of Amazon and was subject to, they call it a triangulation scam, which is basically you buy something from a vendor, they take your credit card and they take your money, but then they use a bunch of credit cards that they've scammed off of the dark web to fraudulently purchase something else. And then you get stuck with, because everything's being shipped to you with these scam cards, you get stuck with the crime, right? So he lost his job. He lost his job prospects because he was shown as being arrested for it. And he's facing prison time for having just bought some stuff for his tribe. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like these are the faults and the problems that exist within
The current system.
the traditional currency system
Yeah.
that Bitcoin fixes.
Yeah. I wonder, do you think that there's any other cryptocurrencies that does what Bitcoin does specifically?
Well, I mean, like in principle, sure. There's tons of solutions along that spectrum. I mean, but Bitcoin is by far, the most stable and probably the most decentralized version of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything as good as Bitcoin.
I mean, it's like we always say, horses for courses, right?
Yeah.
It's not the most private,
No,
but it's certainly the most decentralized.
for sure. Most secure network.
Definitely the most secure network.
Yeah.
Did you say most centralized?
Decentralized.
Oh, okay.
It's also never been wrong.
Explain that phrase.
There's never been a transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain that is not a true transaction.
If you say after 2013, I would agree with that.
What happened?
There's been a couple rollbacks that have occurred, just a couple instances that have occurred over the course of the existence of the Bitcoin machine, but it was very, early days back then.
Wait. Explain this. I didn't know this.
This actually came up in discussion in crypto Twitter today because Jack Mallers went on. It was CNBC
Yeah, that's
or
the guy.
Bloomberg.
He's the Strike CEO, right?
Yeah,
Why is he trending everywhere?
because he's. I mean, you want to play the clip? He does come off a bit like a jackass in this interview. I think he's going to continue to get invited back on mainstream media to talk about Bitcoins to make us all look like idiots.
What did he say? Could you explain that?
He basically was acting like a crypto Twitter Bitcoin maxi on live national CNBC News,
Saying Bitcoin
crapping
is-
all over ETH, fudding ETH.
Yeah,
Of
course. So it's a scam, this and that.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm trying to find the exact example because I bookmarked this.
Strike
even
CEO and
personally
future
have any
Bitcoin
kind of exposure
payments.
to what we're seeing
This
play
is
out.
it right here.
No.
No, this is an older-
Strike,
yeah, that's it, that's
myself,
it.
and Bitcoin at large has nothing to do with SBF and FTX. I mean, it's nothing other than absolutely disgusting and malicious crime. In the same way that someone can go hijack a car down the street from my house, that has nothing to do with Bitcoin either. Unfortunately, it's just an extreme level of criminal activity, crime, and fraud. However, I think a really important point to make is that the world is finally starting to realize that there's Bitcoin and there's everything else. The way I like to describe the crypto industry and blockchain is it's an arbitrage on the trend. I mean, humanity really found its stride in inventing Bitcoin. Money is the most valuable market good we have in any market. It's nucleus to a functioning society.
Yeah, the whole Bitcoin, then everything else.
And Yeah, and he's talking from an empty shoe closet or something. I mean, like the whole thing.
Yeah, that is cool. I want my studio just be a empty closet.
Right. Now, so there was two incidences. Bitcoin rollback number one was in 2010, so it was barely like in a protocol there, but it had, and there was a second incident that happened in 2013. Wasn't even documented widely until 2015, but they were both hard forks, much like what occurred with Ethereum, that it manufactured Ethereum Classic, except there was just no counterparty that
Was using it.
said that we need to go back to the broken way, right? Everybody was in agreement that these were mistakes, these are protocol level bugs, let's fix them.
Yeah.
And the market cap of Bitcoin back in those days was measured in the millions, right?
Right.
Like, which is barely even a degen launch at this point.
Yeah.
So like this was back when. So to say that it's never had a problem is almost correct, but like certainly in the modern age, in the last decade, no, there's not been a problem.
Yeah. Getting so technical on me.
That's what I'm here for, right?
I know. All right. Well. Now that we're talking, yeah. So
Sorry, before we moved on from the Canada COVID truckers protest thing, we talked about trying to make it a mission for the merge to discuss cryptocurrency from a leftist lens or try to onboard leftists. I mean, that truckers protest, when it happened, I think showed that, it was a workers protest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know leftists are generally for public health measures, but
Right.
never above the rights of a worker to protest or organize.
Yeah.
So it really showed I think it broke a lot of right wingers' brains when that happened to show like the Bitcoiners you're talking about probably were a mix of the two. It probably didn't give a shit what they were protesting for a lot of the cases. It's more so that aspect of freedom of speech and right to protest.
That was what we were documenting in the NCRI report. That was most interesting. It was that this movement of social good that was occurring, social good, public good funding, movement funding, stuff that was the only commonality that it had was that they were increasingly anti-establishment, anti-state movements. It had nothing to do with political stripe or ideology. Like, because Julian Assange, he's associated with Wikimedia, which is, started out as kind of a leftist group, but has moved to the right, depending on, how you want to view that. Ross Ulbricht, primarily a cypherpunk, but also primarily supported by libertarians, which is kind of a right-wing group. But then you look at the Ukraine war, which had almost, I think the number one amount of money raised around it from the same group of donators and same group of investors, a grand total of $108 million over the course of 3 weeks was sent to the cause. $8 million into Ukraine DAO, $100 million directly to the Ukrainian government from largely the same people. Undeniably a left-leaning set of ideologies, Democrat-leaning, not Republican-leaning type constituency support. So, and in Hong Kong HODL, right, it was a workers, if you looked at who the people were supporting it, it was a mix of American right-wing and Canadian left-wing people. And the only ideology that united everybody there was that cipher anarchism or crypto anarchism, cipher punk ideology is the kind of the uniting force there. So it was very unique moment in time to try to chronicle.
And then you can extend not the metaphor, but the analysis over to, talking about cryptocurrency as a whole through a leftist lens or with leftist analysis. And there's always, or I think what we need to tackle this year is the anti-capitalist ideology of that leftists have with crypto, that speculative assets, that it's just an extension of capitalist, capitalist mechanisms versus that ability for, social good, which something that goes in both camps is the environmental impact. They argue one way when I've seen the argument from you the other way, but in general, like bridging that gap between just showing it's not just a speculative asset, like, you know,
Oh, for sure.
whatever stock.
Well, we know now it's not a speculative asset because BlackRock owns them. So
That doesn't mean it's not a speculative asset. I guess maybe I wasn't using the right term, but something BlackRock owns, maybe is what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely an asset. I think the fundamentals are more well defined because of the institutional adoption. I think from a traditional finance perspective, you can start to say it's not a speculative asset. From a political perspective, all assets that are traded on Wall Street are speculative from that perspective, if you're a leftist or an anti-capitalist. But above and beyond all of that, and I think you and I 100% agree on this, because it's not a political concept, basically, is that these are tools before they're financial instruments. Like, they're tools to execute a vision that can't be executed with traditional capitalist tooling. Like, you can't create an AI that runs its own pocketbook with a Bank of America account and a computer in your bedroom. But you can do it with a blockchain and a cloud account, right? So you can't create a movement of people supporting Ottowa truckers or a revolution like a resistance movement in Ukraine with Patreon and GoFundMe. But you can do it with the Ethereum virtual machine and DAO tooling.
So what about the argument that this new asset class is a new speculative class for like profit making and doesn't really retool capitalism fundamentally in any way?
I mean, like,
because I see what you're saying about using it as a tool, but it's still, you can't divorce the two.
I mean, even in statist communism, markets exist, right? And so if markets exist, because you have to,
what about the profit element?
I mean, but like, that's profit is just
Mark just said BlackRock owns some, you know.
Yeah, like profit always you can't divorce profit potential from markets, even with the most idealistic societal communistic structures. The potential for profit will always exist.
The question is the distribution of those, right? But how does Bitcoin fundamentally, it gives you the tools, which I agree with you, to redistribute them equitably if desired by the DAO or by the, you know.
So what's happening with like ordinals and inscriptions on Bitcoin is the same thing that's been going on since the inception with Ethereum, which is the idea to execute smart contracts and have voluntary association around the exchange of digital assets that could potentially be tied to real world assets, which is what we're talking about, this kind of utopian leftist vision of the future. Mm-hmm. Now, what the problem is, I mean, the core, many thinkers would argue, I would say not all leftist thinkers would argue it, most leftist thinkers would argue the true problem with capitalism is not the fact that capital exists, because capital is just an imaginary number we put next to things that are real to denote the difference in, exchange. Mm-hmm. The problem with capital is that there is a elite class of people that define what capital is. Now, in every country, that's a slightly different group of people, depending upon how that country came into existence. But in America, it is primarily the Federal Reserve and the three other branches of government that went into the extent that they interact with our banking system. If you are part of that moneyed elite, you are defining for most of the world what capital is. Now, what Bitcoin with its new inscriptions and ordinals, and what Ethereum does with its token system, is allow anybody with just a little bit of technical knowledge to define what capital is, which takes the power out of the moneyed elite and puts it in the hands of the plebes.
No comment.
Yeah, I understand all the words you're saying. It's that level of headiness. I kind of sit with Mark Shutt on that as to sure, but BlackRock owns some.
BlackRock
what-
owns some of one of those assets, right? But if you so like
No,
let's-
but Bitcoin's the only one. Yeah, I don't think you got the memo.
well, that was what Mahler said, right? But that's actually untrue. And this is my primary problem with Mahler and Maxey's like him, is that they act as if it is just another form of like capitalistic intent to say that Bitcoin is the only form of money. It may be the best form of money that exists within the pantheon that currently is exchanged, but it's not true that it's the only form of money. It's not the only form of exchange. It's flatly untrue. You know, chickens and cattle exist. That's a form of money for the people that primarily deal with farms and chickens and cattle, right? You exchange some chickens for some other stuff, some feed, some cattle. It's like there's a whole bunch of pairs that exist.
I mean, it all comes down to what box you're put into.
Right, exactly. But what blockchain offers us that we've never had before in human history is the ability to create our own boxes.
Until those boxes are owned by BlackRock and everybody else. Then what?
Okay. BlackRock can't buy all the boxes. They can buy many boxes, but they can't buy everybody's box, because you and I can start one right now and never tell BlackRock.
But it doesn't help if you and I start one and no one uses it. And
Absolutely, it helps. Okay, so let me give you an example. Like, this is an example that exists in the real world and was constructed by a company we've all heard of, NASDAQ. So NASDAQ has been experimenting with blockchain for close to a decade now. And one of the examples they came up with, I like to trot this out in speeches specific on this topic quite a bit because it answers this question. They created a blockchain-based system for smart grids to interact with not the outside world, but itself, right? You've got inside of a smart grid, you've got your smart meter, you've got, these bulbs that can turn themselves off and on because they're connected to network connectivity. You've got, battery walls. You've got the outside grid that you're interacting with. You've got maybe your own power generation like solar or wind or something like that. So none of these devices care about the number of cents per kilowatt hour things cost, except for when it comes to dealing with the larger grid. But they all are very interested in, from their perspective as devices, as to how much they can buy and sell kilowatt hours amongst the system in an automated fashion.
Right.
And a blockchain is an amazing mechanism for all. So the exchange between like Mark Hopkins' house token and kilowatt hours, that's a thriving market that can exist in a decentralized way amongst all of my devices that has nothing to do with BlackRock. It only touches a dollar amount once it touches the grid outside of it.
That's cool as hell.
It's a great way to end the show.
What?
Leave everyone
I mean, but
on-
those are the use cases. It's just unfortunately there's you got to tell a person at a time, or we got to figure out how to tell people what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just more green and red graphs,
Right. Yeah, like it's basically the moral of that. Like, it gets very technical in the middle, but the moral of that is like money. It's money, but it's money inside of a closed ecosystem that just has a very tangential connection to what humans consider to be money.
Yeah.
And it's a voluntary system, and it could all disappear overnight and go to zero. And it's not going to collapse anybody's economy. It's just the money that exists for the purpose of that ecosystem functioning.
Right.
And you could do that
100%.
for any ecosystem.
100%.
And you're not subject to a Federal Reserve or what Jamie Dimon has to say about your money, or even Larry Fink.
Good way to end off. Okay, one more question. Try to do it in a minute. A minute question. If you were a straight up Marxist Bitcoiner, what would your argument be?
A Marxist Bitcoiner.
Just Put it in ChatGPT. It'll give you a
Do you
better
need to
response.
think?
to what
You
we
need to
can
think
come
on
up
that.
I'd probably have to think on that. If I was a Marxist blockchainer is far easier than Marxist Bitcoiner.
Okay, that's a market blockchainer. So Marxist blockchainer.
A Marxist blockchainer is, I mean, like the pitch here is that a moneyed elite is not creating the means of exchange and not defining capital for everybody. Anybody with a modicum of technical knowledge can define capital for themselves in a fully blockchain world. That's probably under a minute.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna come at you every week or every show with, okay, give me a Leninist blockchain, give me a Maoist blockchain. Really, I want you to answer these.
That'll be a fun montage one day.
Because sure, if you're going, that's pretty generic, but let's go with Leninist.
Yeah.
You know,
It gets more difficult when you get into statism because crypto and blockchain is an inherently like anarchist concept.
Yeah, anti-state.
That's why I
Power-
left it with Marxists. That's all that matters. But you know, there's some Marxist Leninists would say that you have to go through Leninism to get to Marxism, or vice versa. I mean,
And some would say you're canceled. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching Web3Ready. No, this is fun times. Thanks, guys, for steering the ship today. This is a good combo.
Yeah.
Lots of things to digest. I think it's great having these deep conversations. I hope 90% of viewers understand what we're talking about.
we're still live, just so you know, Mark.
I know.
I don't want you to.
I'm
You
talking.
sure?
He's talking to the
wanted
audience?
to say that.
I'm talking to the audience. Yeah.
I know.
No, it was a good show.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Oh, you got 5 minutes to get going, right?
Yeah, I got to bounce.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching Web3Ready. Our host, our production host, and my co-host have led the ship today, and I'm very glad for it. We'll see you next week. Until then, stay Web3 ready.
Hey, thanks for watching The Merge. We've got a ton more stuff for you to watch on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere. Check us out.